Before we continue, we'll take a brief recap of what we discussed yesterday. Yesterday, we discussed the three cardinal principles which are prescribed by Vedanta to enable us to achieve three things in life. What are the three things? Success, prosperity, happiness. Third, growth, moksha, exactly. And these three cardinal principles are, number one, function on duties, never claim rights. Always you must act in such a way that you command the resources of the world, not beg at the doors of the world. Second, attachment versus detachment. This is one of the most misunderstood concepts of Vedanta, but one of the most liberating concepts. And the third is thought on the world or on that which is beyond the world. Excellent. And then we discussed verse 66 of chapter 18, one of the most famous verses. Sarva dharman parityajya mamekam sharanam vraja. The dharma of the body is perception and action. The dharma of the mind is feelings and emotions. The dharma of the intellect is thoughts and ideas. But your dharma, my dharma, is not that. Even if you vaguely suspect that your true nature, your dharma may be something completely different from this, by God, your life will be changed. Just suspect. Like in the movie Random Harvest, there is this man who goes into the World War, comes back injured, and has lost his memory. So he's waiting in the hospital for some parents to come and claim him as theirs, and that never happens. In the meanwhile, he gets friendly with one of the nurses in the hospital and starts a life of his own with her. And they get married, they have a child, everything is going on smoothly. And suddenly he decides to go travel to another city to look for a job. And when he goes there, this can happen only in movies. What happens is he has a second accident. And in that second accident, he regains his original memory and loses the immediate memory. So, by then, 7 years have passed. So he remembers his home, his family, everything he remembers very clearly. He goes back home. But those days, I suppose the same law holds good now. The law was that if a person disappears for 7 years, he is assumed dead and his property is divided among the heirs. And that was what was about to happen. That day was the 7th year of his disappearance. And his sisters and the brothers-in-law and all the people who were going to get his fortune had assembled there at this long dining table to celebrate their good fortune. Just then, this fellow appears like a ghost. They look at him, they don't know whether they should be happy that their brother has come back or sad that they've lost their money. Anyway, he goes back and gets into the routine. After all, he is the son of a nobleman, an aristocrat. Even while everything is going on fine, there's one thing that bothers him, and that is, where was I these last 7 years? What was my life then? And the only clue he has is his door key, home key, where he has left his wife and child behind. But he doesn't remember. So every now and then he takes out this key and keeps looking at it, trying to figure out what that key is. And he knows that somewhere this key is the key to his knowledge. Life goes on. He's a young, handsome man, so everyone wants him to get married. He says, no, I will not get married till I know where I was these last 7 years. So this is the kind of suspicion that we are talking about. You know, there are so many things about yourself you don't know. You don't know where you've come from, you don't know where you're going, you don't know what on earth you're doing here. You don't know your mission in life. You know nothing. And that ignorance must set off this research into finding out, who am I? What is my mission in life? What am I born here to achieve? And that key is your own conscience. So, as this guy goes along, his wife has tracked him down. And she goes to the psychiatrist and says, he is my husband, now what do I do? So the psychiatrist says, you must help him regain his memory. Because if you go and confront him with the truth, he might accept you as a wife, but he won't love you like the way he loved you earlier. So you must help him regain his memory. So what does she do? She takes a job as his secretary. And the rest of the story you have to see the movie for. But what we have to take away from this story is the fact that until we find out who we are and what our role in life is, you cannot rest content. So therefore, your dharma is Atman, says the Gita. You have to go home this evening, being the last day, and try and figure things out. Every now and then, when you have a little time, think, reflect. And that suspicion that maybe I'm not what I believe myself to be unlocks the doors to your discovery. So what must you do? Continue acting with only one difference. That is, the intention of the action is to purify yourself. The intention is not to get profit, pleasure, name, fame, etc. So now we move on with today's theme. Our personality, you and I, consist of 4 elements. These 4 elements are, number 1, the physical body, number 2, the mind, number 3, the intellect, and 4, Atman. Now, if you take a look at this, Atman is a constant in all of us. The spirit in us is the same. There is precious little you can do about it. It's there. The body is only a vehicle that carries you from place to place. Your performance, just as in a car, the fuel is the same in all cars, the body of the car is only meant to carry the engine. Its role is limited in the performance. The real thing that makes a difference, what determines the performance of the car? The engine. Similarly, the engine that drives you from experience to experience, the engine that drives you right through your life is your inner personality, the mind and the intellect. And Vedanta, the Bhagavad Gita, helps us to revitalize our inner personality, tune up our inner personality, refine our inner personality in such a way that you get to understanding Atman and operating out of Atman. So, the 2 paths that are made available to us right from the beginning, from the 3rd chapter, Arjuna is confused. He keeps asking Krishna, Krishna, on the one hand you advocate action, on the other hand you say renunciation, contemplation, the path of knowledge. Which of the 2 must I follow in order to reach Shreyaha? Shreyaha is the ultimate good, not Preyaha. Preyaha is the path of the pleasant. So Krishna continuously tries and explains it to him. Arjuna never gets it till the 18th chapter. So what it means is, if you have too many desires within you, these desires are pressing for fulfillment, these desires are pushing you towards action, and so you become an active personality. Such a person, when he or she turns spiritual, must necessarily convert the actions into worship, because that's the bulk of his personality. Those of us who have very few vasanas, very few desires, who have worked towards desire elimination, since there are very few desires, there is less emphasis on action. Then what happens most of the time? That person merely perceives the world. The world enters him through the organs of perception, and the bulk of his personality is geared towards merely receiving the stimuli from the world. So such a person is contemplative by nature. Now take a look at us. We are a mix of the two. Let's say most of the time we are active because we have desires within us, and these desires drive us to activity morning to night. These activities you convert to action. A person who has less desires is less driven by desires, and so he is more contemplative. Sometime in your life you are contemplative, most times you are active maybe. So you have to proportion your spiritual practice so that it suits your inner personality. To the extent you are active, give it karma yoga. To the extent you are contemplative, give it jnana yoga. Now in the Gita, he introduces a new concept called buddhi yoga. What is this buddhi yoga? Is this a fourth yoga? No. What he means is the use of your buddhi, your intellect, to gain yoga. Yoga is not doing pranayam and asanas. Yoga means to reunite with your own self. So how do you do that? You do this through the refining of your energies. Just as out in the world there is raw energy, and that raw energy, like crude petroleum, needs to be refined into various petroleum products, only then it is useful to us. In fact, recently, those of you who followed the news, there is a gentleman, Indian, called Sridhar, who has devised a power generation unit which uses clean fuel. He just uses hydrogen and oxygen, and the end result is water. In the process, a great deal of energy is created. So when he was interviewed, he said, all previous manufacturing or generation of energy depended on the laws of thermodynamics, which has limitations. This breaks free from those limitations, and therefore you get a fantastically efficient system. And then he says the technology was available long back, but it was very, very expensive. Now that gap has been bridged. So that's what it is. Similarly, you look within you. As long as you're operating out of the body, mind, intellect, body is the least efficient, has the most limitations. You are then bound by those limitations. You break free from the body and identify with an emotion, operate out of your mind, you find that the limitations of the body no longer fetter you. Then the mind takes over and you come up with stupendous performance. You've seen people with a high level of emotional motivation, they somehow manage to break free from physical limitations. Then you come up with an intellectual ideal. Like Gandhiji had an intellectual ideal, or let's say Dr. Verghese Kurian had an intellectual ideal of ensuring that India was self-sufficient in milk production, and that intellectual ideal helped break free from all other limitations. What they are talking about here is you're bound by your obsession for the body, mind, and intellect. You're bound by the limitations of your own desires and ego, which make you into a midget, a poor replica of the original you. And once you embark on this spiritual path, you keep shedding these limitations as you go along. And finally, you come up with infinite power, which is the state of Atman, which is your original state. So, raw energy to refined energy. Now, if you take a look at the Bhagavad Gita, we are in the 18th chapter, right from the beginning. Krishna starts by telling Arjuna, Arjuna, you have to help yourself. I can't do it for you. Uddhared atmana atmanam, says he in the 6th chapter. You have to help yourself. Lift yourself by yourself. For you are your greatest friend and you are your greatest enemy. So the onus is on us. It's as if he has a DIY kit, do-it-yourself kit, which he gives to us. And by the time you come to the 18th chapter, here he says, Tameva sharanam gaccha sarva bhavena bharata. So how do the two go together? See, initially, when you embark on the spiritual path, you find that you have thousands and millions of desires all working at cross purposes with each other, so they get you into a gridlock. You know what a gridlock is? The other day we were going back, and at one of these junctions here, you found that when the cops are not there, when the signals are not functioning properly, everybody goes whichever way, and you get into a gridlock. Everything gets jammed. And that's what's happening within us. So you have to slowly extricate yourself, slowly loosen up, and organize yourself, organize your desires, organize your inner personality with the help of the buddhi, intellect. Intellect is that which takes you right from the beginning, the starting point of spiritual life, till the end. It is the last instrument to go before realization. So never can you let go of the buddhi. But then, as you go towards the end, and you are left with the last thought, the last desire, what you need to do is to let go of that thought. And it's only when you let go of that thought, when you realize there is nothing more to be done, I've done all that I need to do, there is nowhere to go, I found myself. At that time, you need to let go. Now, this is true not only of the spiritual path, this is true of anything. Let's say you are struggling to come to a solution, you are struggling to find something intellectually, find the answers to something. It may be a business problem, it may be a research problem, whatever it is. And you struggle and struggle with it. And then you reach a stage where you say, I've done everything that I need to do. And at that point, you need to let go. And it's when you let go that the answer comes to you. Maybe that's why Archimedes discovered the famous Archimedes principle not in a lab but in a bathtub. Why? Because he struggled with the concept, he did not arrive at the solution, he let go, went into the bathtub, suddenly he got it. So that is the thing. You have to start with taking the onus on yourself, taking responsibility for your own actions and your life, and at some stage you need to let go and say, I've done everything that I need to do. Tameva sharanam gaccha, sarva bhavena. What is this sarva bhava? With all your being, with the depth of your being, if you do something, it has miraculous results. We have a story in our Shastras which speaks of a little boy called Gopal, whose mother was a poor widow and could not afford to send him to a school nearby, so she had to send him to a school that was far away, and that little boy had to go through a forest to get to that school. So after getting him admission to the school, the young boy comes and says, but mother, I'm scared. In the forest there are wild animals and I feel scared to go through. So the mother says, don't worry, beta. Whenever you go through the forest and you feel afraid, call out to Krishna. Krishna will come and escort you through the forest. So who's Krishna? He says, he's your friend. He'll come and play with you. So he was a pure person. He didn't question the mother, didn't have any negativities. He accepted it. The next day when he went to school and he felt afraid in the dark there, he called out to Krishna and Krishna came. And they had a wonderful time, and before long, before he knew what was happening, he was in school. This happened every single day. And the boy was very happy. Then came Guru Purnima. You know, in the Indian tradition, knowledge is always given for free by the Guru. And the disciple gives a dakshina, whatever he or she feels